You think the material is solid. You place your hand on a table. It resists. It stops you. You feel something real, hard, undeniable. Imagine that the atoms touch, that the matter of your hand meets the matter of the table. It is this contact that produces the sensation of solidity. That's wrong. Your hand never touches the table. The atoms of your skin never touch the atoms of the wood. Never. They don't touch each other because they can't touch each other. What you call contact does not exist. What you call matter is almost entirely empty. And what you call solidity is a repulsion between charge clouds that never meet. Richard Feynman put it bluntly. If you compressed a human being to remove all the empty space between its atoms, what remained would be a speck of dust invisible to the naked eye. You are not made of solid matter. You are made of organized emptiness. And this emptiness keeps you standing. Let's start with an atom, not a drawing of an atom, not the symbol you've seen in textbooks. A real atom, a carbon atom, for example, the one that makes up part of your skin, your bones, every cell in your body. You're probably picturing a small sphere, something dense, something compact. A microscopic sphere of matter. That's what you were shown. That's what your brain retained. But that's not what an atom is. A carbon atom has a nucleus. This nucleus contains protons and neutrons. Around this nucleus are electrons. You already know this. You've learned it. But you've never really visualized what it means in terms of space. Here's what that means. If you enlarge the nucleus of a carbon atom to the size of a marble, say 1 centimeter in diameter, then the nearest electron would be about 1,000 meters away, 1 kilometer. The next electron, even further. Between the two, nothing, not air, not a tenuous gas, not an invisible substance that fills space, nothing, emptiness, an almost perfect emptiness. And yet, it is this atom that you call matter. You are made up of billions and billions of these structures, infinitesimally small nuclei separated by distances that, on their scale, are astronomical. Between them, nothing. Nothing. Still nothing. Feynman liked to remind us of this reality with a simple image. If you took a human being 70 kilos of flesh, bone, and blood and removed all the empty space between the nuclei and electrons, if you compressed every atom until the nuclei actually touched, what would remain would not be visible to the naked eye. You would fit in a grain of dust. Everything else about you, all that weight, all that volume, all that physical presence you feel in the mirror is emptiness. This is not a metaphor. This is not a poetic exaggeration. It is a literal description of the structure of matter. You are made up of 99.9999999999998% nothing. And you think you're strong? Now, place your hand on a table. You feel something, a resistance, a surface. You would say without hesitation that your hand is touching the table. It's obvious. It's immediate. It's indisputable. But that's not what's happening. Your hand does not touch the table, ever. The atoms in your skin never touch the atoms in the wood. They cannot. Not because they are too small or too fast, but because physics doesn't allow it. Here's why. Each atom has electrons. These electrons carry a negative electric charge. When two atoms approach each other, their electron clouds begin to interact. And since charges of the same sign repel each other, the electrons in your hand repel the electrons on the table. This repulsion is violent. It is immediate. It acts long before atoms can come into contact, if that word still has any meaning. When you place your hand on a table, what you feel is not contact. It's an electromagnetic repulsive force. The electrons in your skin are literally repelling the electrons in the wood. And this repulsion is so intense, so rapid, that it stops your hand before any atom truly gets close to another. You don't touch anything. You levitate. You are floating above the table at a microscopic distance, held suspended by an invisible force field. Every time you walk, you levitate above the ground. Every time you grip an object, you levitate around it. Every time you sit down, you levitate above the chair. You've never touched anything in your life. Not your mother when she held you in her arms. Not the first object you picked up. Not the food you put in your mouth. Not even your own skin when you scratch your arm. What you call contact is an illusion, a convenient approximation that your brain is constructed because it does not have access to the atomic scale. He doesn't see the forces. He doesn't see the repulsion. He sees a clear boundary, and he calls it surface. But there is no surface. There are only fields that refuse to mix. You are trapped in your own electromagnetic cloud, separated from everything, forever distant, forever isolated, floating in a universe where nothing touches anything else. And yet, you feel the solidity. You're starting to see the problem. If atoms are empty, and if they never touch, then what is really there? The nucleus, okay, it's small, but it's dense, it's concentrated. You can at least imagine it as a thing, an object, a particle located somewhere in space. But what about electrons? You may have heard that an electron is not a small ball that spins around the nucleus. This is not a planet in orbit. This model is wrong. You were shown it in school because it's simple, because it corresponds to something you can draw, but the reality is different. An electron isn't somewhere. It has no defined position. It has no trajectory. It is not an object moving through space. It is a probability, a distribution, a cloud of possible occurrences. You can't say the electron is here. You can only say, if you are looking for the electron, there is a certain probability that it will appear here and another probability that it will appear there. But before you look for it, it's nowhere to be found, or everywhere at once, or neither. Language is starting to fail. It's not because we lack information. It's not because the electron is too fast to be tracked. It's because the very notion of definite position is meaningless at this scale. The electron is the cloud. It is spread out in space. It exists as a potentiality, not as a localized object. So when you say, my body is made of atoms, what does that really mean? This means that you are made of tiny nuclei, lost in the void, surrounded by clouds of fuzzy probability that have no clear boundary. This means you don't have a real edge. No precise surface, no clear boundary between you and the rest of the world. Your skin is not a barrier. It is a transition zone, a probability gradient, a region where the electron clouds of your atoms become less dense, where electromagnetic repulsion begins to weaken, where the definition of you gradually dissolves into the environment. You are vague, you are unclear, you are a temporary structure, held together not by solidity, but by a dynamic balance of forces that refuses to let the clouds interpenetrate. And all this emptiness, all this indeterminacy, all this absence of solid matter, you feel it as a body. You perceive it as something stable, coherent, defined. But that's not who you are. Let's return to that feeling of solidity. You are standing. Your feet are on the ground. You are not falling. You are not sinking into the matter beneath you. Something is supporting you. Something is holding you in place. You call that the ground. But the ground is not a solid thing. You know that now. It is an arrangement of atoms, themselves almost entirely empty, themselves incapable of touching each other. So what's stopping you from crossing? The answer is simple, and it is violent. The electrons in the soles of your feet repel electrons from the ground with tremendous force. This force is electromagnetic. It acts at a distance. It doesn't need contact. It doesn't need atoms to meet. It acts as soon as the electron clouds begin to overlap. And it increases exponentially as you try to bring the atoms closer together. It is this repulsion that keeps you standing, not solidity, not matter, a force of rejection, an electromagnetic refusal, an invisible barrier that prevents your atoms from penetrating the atoms of the soil. You are not standing on the ground. You are levitating above him at an infinitesimal distance, constantly repelled by a force field that you can neither see nor feel directly. And that's true for everything. When you sit on a chair, you don't really compress it. You are pushed away by it. The electron clouds of your atoms and those of the chair get closer. The repulsion increases. And at a certain point, it becomes intense enough to balance your weight. You are floating, suspended by an invisible force, kept in balance by a mutual rejection between structures that never touch. Your entire body is an architecture of repulsion. The atoms in your bones do not touch each other. They are held in place by electromagnetic forces. The molecules in your skin do not touch. They are held together by chemical bonds which are themselves simply configurations of electrical fields. You are a structure held upright by refusal, by distance, through a constant tension between charged clouds that cannot mix. And this tension is so constant, so uniform, so perfectly balanced that you feel it as solidity. But this is not solidity. It is organized levitation. It is a permanent war between forces that are balanced on a scale that you cannot perceive. You cannot stand upright because you are made of hard material. You stand upright because the emptiness within you refuses to mix with the emptiness around you. So why can't you feel it? Why, if all this is true, doesn't your hand tremble when it rests on a table? Why don't you feel this electromagnetic repulsion as a vibration, as a fluctuating pressure, as something unstable? Why is the illusion of solidity so perfect? Because your brain doesn't construct an image of the world as it is. He constructs an image of the world in such a way that it is useful. Your perception is not a camera. It does not faithfully record reality. She simplifies it. She translates it. She transforms it into something you can use to survive. And at the scale you live on, the scale of macroscopic objects, human distances, the forces you can exert with your hands, the electromagnetic repulsion between atoms is so fast, so uniform, so constant, that it behaves like a solid surface. It does not fluctuate. It does not waver. It doesn't let your hand through the table even once in 1,000 times. It's absolutely reliable, absolutely reproducible. So your brain did what evolution taught it to do. It smoothed over the details. It ignored the underlying mechanisms. He built a simple, effective, immediate model. There is a table. It is solid. You can lean on it. This model works. It allows you to grasp objects, to walk without thinking, to manipulate the world around you without having to calculate electromagnetic field integrals at every moment. But that's not the truth. It's an approximation. A useful fiction, your brain doesn't show you atoms. It doesn't show you emptiness. It doesn't show you forces. It shows you objects, clear boundaries, defined surfaces, things you can name, recognize, use. And this fiction is so deeply ingrained in you that you cannot turn it off. Even now, when you intellectually understand that the table is empty, that your hand is empty, that nothing is touching anything, you continue to see a solid table. You continue to feel the contact. Your perception refuses to align with reality because its function has never been to reveal reality. Its function is to keep you alive. And for that, illusion is enough. Evolution has not sculpted brains capable of perceiving the quantum structure of matter. She sculpted brains capable of distinguishing stable ground from a precipice, a ripe fruit from a rotten one, a predator from a shadow. She sculpted brains that build simple, fast, efficient models, not real models. And you are the product of this selection. You live in a world of surfaces, objects, solidity, not because this world exists, but because your ancestors who perceived the world this way survived. Those who saw the void, who felt the repulsion, who hesitated before each step, they are the ones who died. You are the descendant of those who accepted the illusion. Richard Feynman liked to recount this thought experiment. Take a human being, 70 kilos, 1 meter 80, a complete body with its bones, muscles, organs, and brain. Now, remove all the vacuum, not metaphorically, literally. Remove all the empty space between the atomic nuclei and the electrons. Compress each atom until its constituents are actually touching. Eliminate all unnecessary distance. What remains? A grain of dust, not a pebble, not a marble, a grain of dust so small that you couldn't see it with the naked eye. Everything else, the 70 kilos, the volume, the physical presence was empty. An emptiness organized by forces, but an emptiness nonetheless. Feynman wasn't saying this to shock anyone. He wasn't trying to be provocative. He was simply describing a direct consequence of the atomic structure of matter. If you understand that an atom is composed of a tiny nucleus surrounded by an electron cloud that extends over a distance thousands of times greater, then you understand that almost all of the volume of an atom is empty. And if you are made of atoms, then you are made of empty space. This is not an approximation. This is not a poetic image. This is a quantitative description. You can do the calculation. You can compare the radius of a nucleus to the radius of an atom. You can estimate the volume actually occupied by dense matter, protons, neutrons, electrons, if they are localized, and compare this volume to the total volume of your body. The result is staggering. You are a phantom architecture, a structure that stands not because it is full, but because the forces that hold it up refuse to let it collapse. And you experience it as presence, as mass, as reality. But what you feel is not what is. You are a temporary arrangement of vacuum, organized by electromagnetic fields, held in equilibrium by a mutual repulsion between probability clouds that never meet. And this structure, this fragile, improbable thing, almost entirely made of nothing, is what you call me. You, your body, your presence, your physical identity. All of this rests on emptiness, on absence, on a refusal to collide. Feynman knew that this idea was difficult to accept. He knew that human intuition violently resisted this conclusion. So he repeated it, he reformulated it, he presented it from different angles, because he also knew that once you truly accept this idea, once you stop treating it as an intellectual curiosity and let it permeate your model of the world, something changes. You no longer look at objects in the same way. You no longer look at your own hand in the same way.